Hello everyone and welcome to today's Dynamics 365 Tech Talk. Get started with planning optimization for Dynamics 365 supply chain management. My name is Evan and I'll be your moderator today. We are broadcasting this web conference through Teams live events and the audio can be heard through your device speakers. Today's web conference is being recorded on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation, and by participating in the session using Microsoft Teams, your name, email address, phone number, and/or title may be viewable by other session participants. If you do not consent to being a part of a recorded session, please disconnect at this time. The recording will be available on the Tech Talks Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. If you have questions for the presenters or need support, please use the Q&A panel located on the right side of your screen. Our presenters will be responding to your questions throughout the event, and we will have some time at the end to speak to some questions verbally. Thank you for your patience during these announcements. Now let's get started. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Rytt, Principal Program Manager. Christian, over to you.
Thank you, Aiden. And actually, let me also start by introducing Vanya, who will be our chat master today. So whenever you have a question on the Q&A, Vanya will be my co-driver behind the scene, and he will also join us in the end when we dive into some Q&A. But welcome to this session. Get started with planning optimization for Dynamics 365 supply chain management. I'm excited about having the opportunity to talk to all of you. So let's dive in and look at what we have ahead of us. So on the agenda, I will start out by giving everyone who is not 100% familiar with planning optimization what it's all about. Then we will dive into the current capabilities, what it can do today. We'll talk a bit about the migration story. How do you actually onboard planning optimization? When is the right time? And what does it take? Then we will take a look at the roadmap and finish it up with some time for a Q&A, where we will answer some of the questions that we didn't get to during the presentation. So with that, let me dive in. So, planning optimization. We call it near real-time planning during office hours. And it is a new version, you could say, of the master planning engine that had been in the system for many years, about 20 plus years, where it was living inside of the X++ code base and all the calculations was done in SQL. The master planning is responsible for generating things like planned orders, actions, delays, and basically figuring out what material you need to fulfill your demands, and basically taking care of your supply. And that also includes scheduling, which we'll get back to a little later in the roadmap. But this is where we are in the application. So with planning optimization, we're taking a different approach. If we look at the overview down here, you can see that from supply chain management in the client, whenever you run master planning, we send a signal to the planning optimization service that runs in memory in the cloud. It figures out, based on the signal, what data is required to run the plan. It asks the connector to get that data in the database, and it gets it in the database, and the data flows back in the same direction here. Now the planning optimization finish all the calculations and send the result back, and once it's all loaded up in the database in terms of planned orders and delays and what have you, you will get the signal back to the client that the plan has completed. So from a user point of view, when triggering the plan, you would see no different except that it's a lot faster and a bit simpler to run. I'll get back to that later. So that was the super high-level view. Now, why did we decide to make planning as a service with this planning optimization? There were 3 main reasons. The first one was to reduce the load during SQL when master planning is running. Today, with the built-in master planning, when you run master planning, it can easily generate so much traffic on the SQL that it makes it hard for other people to work on the system while it's running. It can cause very slow forms when loading. It can even result in some deadlock situations. So for that reason, we wanted to reduce the load during master planning run so that you can run it during office hours and you're not tied to only run it at night or outside of office hours. Another thing that we are seeing more and more lately is that companies start to operate 24/7, leaving a lot less room for nightly runs. Because if you have warehouse where people are picking most of the night, you can't really have a master planning running at the same time. So that was the first reason. The next reason here is that we wanted to provide a way faster master planning, especially for large data sets. Dynamics 365 supply chain management is moving into facilitating customers who have very large data sets, and we have started to see run times of many hours. And that's the second thing we wanted to address with master planning. We want to get it from hours down to minutes. And I'll get to a little bit about what to expect there, but it is a lot faster. And then finally, we wanted to make it easier to introduce new planning functionality. Today, the master planning functionality have evolved in an ERP system inside a code base, and it's deeply intertwined into all the functionality in here. By breaking it out and having a clean API for the service, it makes it a lot easier for us to introduce new planning functionality. It's a lot easier for us to control it, and it's a new code base. Now this means, and that's the last part here, so it's not really a why, but it's a result. As a result, we built it ground up, meaning that you will not have all the features from day one. And this is why we have the migration progress in phases. So I'll also get back to that. But it's important to notice that all the features are built from scratch, more or less. Sometimes we can reuse, but it is a new code base. So what does it look like? If we take a look at the built-in master planning, you can see a typical flow would be you receive an order, you have a demand, in other words. If that's a sales order, master planning wouldn't pick it up until the next planning run. That could be during the night, or it could be during the weekend. Then it would run for large environments for some hours. And then you would need to follow up on the plan in the morning. And not until you firm the order would the actual supply lead time start. Now with planning optimization, when you receive the order, you can trigger master planning during office hours, so you can start to follow up almost immediately. And then the supply lead time starts. So you can see it's not only the runtime here, but it's also the fact that you don't have to wait for the nightly or the weekend run before you can get the result. And if we take a look at a specific customer examples where we definitely went from hours to minutes, a retailer in Europe with 57 stores where they have their own brand that they fulfill with transfers from a distribution center. They have around 10,000 item variants. And besides that, they have a lot of external brands that are planned for direct delivery to the stores with purchase orders. Before planning optimization, when they were running with the built-in engine, when we approached them, it took 8 to 9 hours. We actually got them optimized down to 1.5 hours. A result of this is actually a lot of new documentation that you will find if you go to our documentation page for optimizing master planning. So definitely recommend that if you're having issues with the current built-in engine. There can be small tweaks on the parameters that can have a huge impact. So their concern was basically that they couldn't complete it within a time slot for the night because they have a lot of other nightly runs that were competing for the process time. And in case the nightly run failed or they had some parameters set incorrectly, they didn't have a plan for the day and they couldn't run it during office hours because that would make everything else slow, especially in the warehouse. And due to this, they were concerned about future business growth if that could overload the planning system. Now, with planning optimization, once we enabled it, actually the first run, as I recall, it was a little bit of shock to everyone because it completed in 58 seconds, let's say a minute here. And this is on their production environment, which was a beastie environment, but actually on their sandbox environment, they could also complete the plan in 2 minutes. This gave them a lot of benefits. Of course, they could run it during office hours, and because they could run it so frequently, they could actually reduce the inventory levels due to the demand during lead time. When the lead time was reduced, they could actually reduce the safety stock. This gave them a cost reduction. It also increased the sale because now they could actually have a bigger variety of products in the store because they didn't need to have so much of each product. It also improved customer service in situations where they ended up with a stock out situation because instead of waiting for 2 to 3 days, they cut 1 day, so it was 1 to 2 days of waiting time. And finally, they started to do simulations because they could see a new result in minutes. They didn't have to wait for a nightly run. So now it suddenly became a lot more interesting to do simulations, rerun it based on forecast changes, and so on. And of course, they got the comfort that their business could grow without overloading the system. A question we get often in the beginning is, so what is the price for planning optimization? And there is no extra charge. Planning optimization is included in the current license. That said, I will add here that future additional planning functionality might come with additional charge. But for now, everything that we have in planning optimization is included with the license, so there is no additional charge, and we intend to have it like that. Another typical question is around extensions. And these are questions that we're getting both from customers who have done some customizations and also, of course, ISVs who have solutions in the planning area, how they can move it over. The service we want to keep as a black box with no code changes. However, we are very open to making extension points, and we fully understand the need to tweak the result, if you will. So today, the options are that you can either do pre-processing of the master data, because all the master data is taken from Dynamics 365 Supply Chain Management, meaning that if you change the data, it will be those data that the service use. Another option is post-processing of the planning result. For this, there is actually already an extension point. You can read more about that in the documentation. With this extension point, you can trigger code that can change the result or rerun something as soon as the plan is completed and written as a planned order. Another question that we often have, and it's something we're looking into for the future, is the possibility to support flow of additional information. It could be some special information that's flowing from the sales order and all the way through to a production order, for instance. In order to make that happen, you would have to have it flow from the sales order to the planned order and then doing firming onto the production order. So this is something we're looking into, to have a flexible setup where you can add additional information as well. Long term, and this is something where we are working closely with both customers and ISVs, we want to have a flexible service that can support the changes needed with extension points, and ideally also external input from other sources as well. So now let me change gear and let's take a look at some of the current capabilities that we have in the system. So the list I have here is the highlights, I would say the main features that were released since the last TechTalk that was recorded, I believe, towards the end of September 2020. So it's what we have added since the October timeframe. The first thing I want to highlight is intercompany. So now we can include planned downstream demand from master plans in other companies. This enables intercompany planning. One thing to notice here is that we don't currently have the ability to trigger multiple plans from the UI with a one click, but you can set it up as a batch job that triggers the jobs individually in the individual companies. So it is achievable, but with the UI, there is still something that we don't have. But intercompany with downstream demand is fully supported, also with forecast and so on. The next thing that I have here is product lifecycle state. So if you have products with lifecycle state, it could be something where you say that certain products are in a lifecycle state that you don't want to include for planning. They should not be considered as supply. They'll be excluded as part of the plan. So this is also something new. Inventory marking. This is the update that we do during firming when you can select the marking. This helps to control the packing information based on the marking. So now this is fully integrated and works very similar to what we had in the classic engine. The next thing here, that's the reduce demand forecast by all transactions. Prior to this, you could only reduce the forecast by sales orders. With all transactions, we open up for any other transactions, which is very useful in case you want to do your forecast in a production setup, for instance, where you want to forecast on components instead of the finished goods. And then you can say that it should reduce the forecast, not just based on sales orders for spare parts, but also the main production orders where it's used as components. And lately we have released the coverage time pins. Prior to that, planning optimization would include any demand and supply when calculating the plan, regardless of the timing. So even though it was 5 or 10 years out, it would be included. Due to the fact that planning optimization is a lot faster, it wasn't a big problem until we started to have situations with customers who had a lot of forecast and other data that started to overload, you could say, the forms or basically the users who had to trawl to a lot of data. So we have introduced it now, and yeah, it's a setting in demo data. It's normally set to 100 days, but this is something to be closely monitored, what you want to have it. It's a great way to filter out noise in the far future. Purchase requisitions, the next one on the list here. So this is whenever you use purchase requisition, if they are approved, they can be picked up by the master planning to generate normally planned purchase orders, but it could actually also be transfers or production orders that you control with your purchase requisitions. And finally, forecast with submodels, the latest we got out here. So a forecast can include additional submodels. So instead of only including the forecast you have on the forecast model itself, it can include forecast models from as submodels underneath it. And all of these, when you get the PowerPoint after here, you will see that I have included link to the documentation for each of them. And also this is the Go link ID to get to the overall planning optimization documentation. And I want to mention now that we added here that the documentation is getting a big overhaul as part of the planning optimization story. Now let's take a look at some of the improved and changed behavior that you will experience when you move to planning optimization. So negative on hand, meaning you have minus something on inventory, that is treated as zero on hand. So in case your data is wrong for some reason, the planning engine will assume zero to avoid oversupply. If we take the situation that you have a store, you received a bunch of goods in the morning, you had zero prior to that, you received, for instance, 100 in the morning and you start selling. But during that receipt, you just got the goods, you didn't have time to register it in the system because customers started coming in. So now you're selling the goods. So maybe at 10 a.m., you would have minus 20 because you actually sold something that you don't have registered in the system yet. But of course, you don't have minus 20. It's not possible. And due to this, the planning engine, if you run it at that point of time before you get it registered, it will not try to replenish the minus 20. It will assume that it's due to an error. So it will assume zero. The next thing is actually, you could say, a new feature, the plan filter. So basically to isolate between plans, we have introduced a plan-specific filter that will be honored at runtime. This means that with planning optimizations, you have two ways to apply a filter. You can apply it directly to a plan that is saved and used every time. And on top of that, you can have your normal runtime filter, which is what you used to have prior to this. The next thing here is order firming based on the order date, so the start date, and not the requirement date, the end date. So for the built-in classic firming, it was done based on the requirement date, the end date, but with planning optimization, we moved it up to use the order date. This gives a lot of benefits because you don't have to consider the lead time when you set your firming time frames. Let's take an example. You want to firm everything that needs to start within the next 5 days to ensure that you get the orders executed so that they can be completed in time. Maybe some of your orders have a lead time of 10 days. In this case, with the old system, you would have to set it to 15 days for these to be included. With a new order firming based on order date, you can simply set it to 5 days, and then you don't have to worry about the lead time. Another change, that is that for the fulfill minimum that is used for safety stock fulfillment, we use today's date plus procurement time. This is defaulted regardless of the setting that you have on your item coverage. And this is basically done because we had a lot of customers complaining about delays because it was set to today's date only, not plus procurement time. And also, what we're seeing is that I would say 99.9% of all the customers we talked to have been super positive about this change because they didn't actually realize that they were getting a lot of delays and the setup was very confusing. The next thing that changed a bit, that's related to the negative days. So planning optimization always use dynamic negative days regardless of the setup in your system. So this means that the negative days, which is basically the time it will look backwards to see if we can reuse some existing supply whenever we have to fulfill the demand. The dynamics in the word means that it will use the lead time to look backwards. So that if you have something, let's say you have an order with a lead time of 5 days, then it will look backwards 5 days to see if you have any demand there. And if not, then it might consider to place an order. But it will not do it if you're within those negative days based on the lead time, because then we might as well use the existing order. We have experienced some situations where we would like to have additional flexibility related to negative days. We'll probably not have negative days as we know them today. Also, the word negative days is not very supply chain-ish. It's inherits from the old AX days, and it's a little hard concept to digest for new members of the family, I would say. The last thing on my list here, explosion. Whenever you run master planning or net requirements, it can be viewed on the explosion form, but you cannot trigger an explosion. And this is because the explosion is you could say, suboptimal part of the plan, because it's only looking at replenishment based on this specific order and not on the entire graph of supply and demand. But we can still view it. Another thing that's important to notice when you work with planning optimization, ensure that you go to feature management and enable the features that you want to use. And let me just give you a simulation example. I will also have a demo on this, but it will not be as nice because I had a little bit problem with my environment. So in this example here, I run the explosion, or I have run planning optimization, and I'm viewing the explosion as a Gantt chart. In case you didn't know it, you can switch from overview to Gantt, and you can view your orders here in a Gantt chart. Here I have color-coded them. You can change the colors here, but they're color-coded, so I can see that my purchase orders in one color, transfer orders in another, and production orders in a third color. Here I have a forecast for 80 eaches of the Speaker Pro Pack, resulting in this result, basically. You can see I have the production happening here of my finished goods, my semi-finished goods. I have a transfer of the tweeter, then I have to produce the Speaker Pro Kit, and then I have to buy some cables, some plugs, and some tweeter speaker unit. Now, if I go and I change the forecast to use a simulation plan, and where I'm changing it from 80 to 160 eaches, so I need double up, and I run planning optimization, it's very fast, as you will see in a minute. Now I can see the updated result, so I can use this, for instance, for detailed simulations of what would happen. In this case, you can see that here we need to purchase wiring harness and crossover, because now we don't have enough to produce the 160. We had enough for the 80, but not for the 160. So with that, let's jump into a demo. Actually, I will start the demo by quickly showing some of the documentation for safety margins, because on safety margins, and by the way, we have Ignite starting tomorrow. Exciting. For those who didn't realize, register. So it's just an example of the documentation that has been greatly enhanced. So you can see we have the safety margin overview. We're talking about what safety margin is. You will have some graphics. And if we go all the way down, we also took some time to explain the calendars, how they are used here. And if we jump in here, you can actually see a very specific overview. If you have the calendar specified on coverage group, on warehouse and vendor, then what calendar is used for duration and what calendar is used to calculate the final date. So you can see all the way through here, you can find the result, and hopefully this will help to demystify some of it a bit. And if we go back here, you will see that there is a lot of information under planning optimization already as part of the documentation. Now let's go and see if we can get this demo environment back to life. and run some master planning. So let's start by going to our good old dashboard here for master planning. I have already turned it on. So if we start it, you can see it saying planning optimization here. I don't have to worry about threads or helpers in here. I just select my plan and whether I want to use auto firming. We can run it for, in this case, the static plan. Let's see. Now it was just starting up on my environment here. And this was run without any filters, and it completed here in, I don't know, a bit less than 10 seconds, I would say. This is for the demo data that would normally run for a bit more than 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes normally on this environment. But here we got it in a bit less than 10 seconds. If we look at the result, and you can see it definitely not because the environment was warmed up. If we look at the result here, you can see I have enabled production. So we have production, we have purchase, we have transfers, we have delays when applicable, and so on. So this is just as you would see it for any other old planning. And if I go and now let's say we want to run some simulation, I have a simulation plan here. We can, I think I already run this one. Let's check. Let's take a quick look at the item I had in my slide before here, and we look at the explosion. Let's see. I have a planned production order here for 80. That's the one we want to see. So that was also what we had in the PowerPoint. And here you can see that we can view the explosion form as we're used to. I can expand it. I can view what's coming from planned orders, from on hand, and what have you, existing orders. And here I can also go and view the Gantt chart. It looks a little different on my environment here, but it's the same chart here, and I can control the colors and so on. Now, the beauty about planning optimization is that I could go to my plan. I would say, well, actually, you know what? I want to use my promotion forecast, and then I want to run it again. And now, because we don't have to wait all night for the plan to happen, I can run it during office hours, and I will have the result almost immediately. So now we can go back to the planned orders. And by the way, as a little bonus info, the first number here in the sequence, that's based on the planning run. So you can see it was 20 before. Now all the planned orders are 21 here. If I filter again on the item number and we take a look. So now basically you can see that we got the 160. So it picked up my change forecast, which was the double up here. And that was it for this one. Let's see if we're quick looking at the time. So let's go a slide pick here. So if we look at the migration to planning optimization, so this is actually covering both, you could say, new customers who want to use planning optimization. We encourage basically all new customers who are implementing Dynamics 365 supply chain management to use planning optimization if at all possible. And for existing customers, we are encouraging them to migrate as soon as possible. Right now, we are supporting the following ASIC geographics. So United States, Canada, Europe, United Kingdom, Australia, and Asia Pacific was added here in December 2020. So these are the current supported ASIC geographics. And if we look at how customers are notified about the migration, so how could you actually figure out that Microsoft would like you to migrate? There was a public announcement about the deprecation. customers that was identified as customers who could migrate, basically because at that point of time they were not using production functionality, they were not generating planned production orders. They got a direct mail to the environment admin with information about how they can migrate, and also in case they could not migrate, how they could request an exception. And that if you need an exception, it happens via a questionnaire. I'll get back to that. But if you require an exception, and that would normally be in case you are pending some functionality that we currently don't support with planning optimization, and I'll repeat this again, and you do not generate planned production orders. Right now, we don't ask customers who have production scenarios to request an exception. We will not do that until we have more production support. So once the exception request is submitted, we will reply over email to the email provided in the questionnaire, whether it's rejected or granted, and we will have some follow-up. And then in basic, all customers should reevaluate if migration is possible when new features are released in case they got the exception. We will also notify customers once the pending features are available. And then it's important to notice that from version 10.0.16, we introduced a warning. I will talk a bit about that on the next slide as well. So it's basically showing up as an error when master planning completed, telling you that it seems like you should be able to use planning optimization, and that we suggested you start to migrate or request an exception, and you would need an exception to avoid this warning. And also notice that this warning is not shown for everyone. It's only for certain scenarios. I'll get back to that as well. And yeah, I think so. Basically, we will notify customers when the features are available. And finally, customers who got an exception, we expect them to migrate to planning optimization as soon as required features become available. Of course, there will be, you could say, a grace period. We don't expect them to upgrade from one day to the other. So if we look at the timeline, going back from April, that's when we had the first GA of planning optimization with limited functionality. We asked people to migrate if they could. In October, we started to tell people that they should start to migrate. This is when the first mails went out to customers who didn't have planned production orders generated during master planning. And now here in February, with the release of version 10.0.16, there is this message shown when you run planning optimization. In case you don't use planning optimization and you don't have any planned production orders generated. As part of this message, there's a link to how to get an exception, but it's important to notice that it's not blocking the usage of the current master planning in any way. Around April timeframe, we will start the deprecation of distribution scenarios, meaning that basically scenarios that we fully support with planning optimization. Here we will start to really ask customers to move over. And if you don't, and we can see that everything is fully supported, and you should have no problems using planning optimization, you might, if you approach support, be told that the right way to address that would be to upgrade to planning optimization. Moving on, October here, we hope that we will have the first MRP scenarios that will start to deprecate, because we will have functionality like scheduling supported, but it will not be everything. We will at least be in April 2022 and maybe even further on. So this is on a very high level, the way we look at it. And to go back to this error message that I mentioned before, it looks like this. It's important to notice the text I highlighted in yellow here. Master planning did complete successfully. And also it's only shown when all of the following is true. So master planning run will build in master planning engine, the classic engine. You didn't generate any planned production orders in the last 8 days on any of your plans. It's a cloud-hosted environment. You're on version 10.16 or higher. You didn't get any exception. And if you're on a sandbox, there's actually a way to turn it off as well if you're on Service Fabric. So for the exception, when is it relevant? Well, it's relevant whenever features, extensions, or other factors basically prevents the migration to planning optimization, and you have no planned production orders generated. Then it's relevant only in case the error message is shown, or your admin, your environment admin received a mail from Microsoft, and you plan to upgrade to 10.16. And the exception, once we enable that, will basically allow you to run the built-in master planning without having this message shown. Another question that generates a lot of worries is, will master planning suddenly stop working? I'm scared to move to 10.16. Do a risk that it suddenly stop working in 10.16 or 17? The short answer is no. It will not. It will continue to work. As I mentioned before, we might have situations where support will be limited on the built-in master planning, and we definitely do encourage everyone who can to migrate to planning optimization, because it is a lot faster and you will see a lot of benefits. That's what we're seeing from the customers who have migrated. And a short demo around the migration here. So if we go and quickly take a look here. So the fit analysis, an important tool, you will find it under master planning. And it's the last one here, fit analysis. And if we run that, it will, on the demo data here, take like 10 seconds or so, 5 seconds. Here, it provides me a list of things that I should be aware of. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a problem for me to move to planning optimization. For instance, it's informing me that about this fulfill minimum. In some situations, I don't have it set to today's date plus procurement time. And almost everyone will have this because the default in the system is today's date and not today's date plus procurement time. However, we have discussed forth and back to change it, but as it is a breaking change, we have decided not to do it as planning optimization will take over anyway. But this is a very good starting point when you're starting to evaluate whether or not to move to planning optimization now and when you're ready. And this is important to notice, this doesn't require that you have planning optimization enabled on your environment. I think this the first version it came out with was 10.07 or something, and then it has been enhanced over the versions. So you can run it also on some old versions as well. Let's see if I can jump to another environment here. If we go over here on lifecycle services. So whenever you want to install the add-in that's required for planning optimization, it's also greatly described on the documentation Get Started page. You will see the add-in here under Power Platform integration, and it's important to notice that this is required, the Power Platform integration. And once you have that, you can then install your add-ins simply by clicking a new install. I'm pretty sure that we waited so long here while I was talking that it might have, actually it was waiting. Okay, so we have, I already have planning optimization installed here on my demo environment, demo 1 that I was using. I don't want to uninstall it. But here it would show up with planning optimization just like you're seeing everything else here. You would select it, you would click OK, and then you would be able to install it. So that is the installation. And if we look at, if we just go back for a second here, turning it on and off, very simple. There's a one button click. So here, use planning optimization, yes or no. And you can turn on and off as much as you want, but it's a master switch that's working for all companies. That's important to know. Let's get back here. So let's take a look at the roadmap. This is an updated version of the roadmap that I have shown in previous presentations. So I just want to give a status for everyone to track where we're going. October 2020, it's long due. And as you can see here, all the items in here are nice and green, meaning that they are already shipped. And you can also see here for April, we actually already shipped some of the functionality that we are planning to push out with the April release. So you can always already use that now. We are working on the final safety margins, which is order margin and issue margin. We have the demand forecast transaction reduction key. That's on you could say the classic non-production part. On the MRP side, the big thing that we are working on right now, that's scheduling. We are starting with infinite capacity. Finite is coming later. And then we also trying to see if we can squeeze in subcontracting. And the green box here, it's important for me to notice that it doesn't mean it will be available April 1st. All of this, you can see I have June here. This is the time frame from April that we have in this corner here. But some of it is already available. If we look beyond that, another thing that we have very high on the list, that's for process manufacturing, batch orders, co-byproducts, sequencing, and so on. Support for this, so you can use formulas and so on. Also, actions, it's actually something that we're trying to see if we can squeeze in even earlier. But right now we have it in the box down here. It will probably be redesigned to some degree to make it more flexible compared to what we have today and more user-friendly. Shelf life, expiration date, and best before is also something that we are getting a lot of requests for. So we're also trying to see if we can squeeze it in as soon as possible. And once we have that, we have the schedule with finite capacity for manufacturing, and CTP is also high on our list. And then you can basically see the rest that we have on here. Of course, this is the roadmap and subject to change. I don't want to take too much time on this. It will be part of the deck. And one thing I want to notice is that on the documentation page for fit analysis, you will also find all of this, all the details for planning optimization with the dates on it in a table there, and we're trying to keep that up to date. So that's actually where you will find the latest expected availability dates for the individual features that you might be depending on. And as a little surprise, we actually just checked in the code for something called planned order firming with filtering, also known as query-based firming, and it will ship with 10.0.19. Let me see if I can find the environment. Let's go here. Let's go to feature management. And let's search for planned order. Let me. Here you can see I have planned order with planned order firming with filtering. I have it enabled. Just enabled it. It was just added the other day. So now with that done, if I go to master planning, under master planning and run, I will see a new option here, planned order firming. Let's click that. So in here, now I can do my firming from this dialog here. And I have the normal options to group by vendor, what have you. I can select the plan. I can also select the firming time fence in days. I can select forward and backward. I can, and this is the exciting part, I can add a filter. So this will open my query where I'm free to query as I like on the data that I would like to include. Here I just put a simple filter on warehouse 13. Let's apply that. So we have a filter here. Then, of course, I can run it as a batch job, so I can repeat it as I want to. We're actually seeing this as the future of firming, that you can have it as a separate job. And I can actually preview the result. So I can go in here and see the resulting 37 planned orders that was identified right now. So here you can actually see the planned orders that would be firmed if I click OK. So we're pretty excited about this additional feature, and it's going to ship with 10.0.19, and it will be available both for the classic planning engine and also planning optimization. And with that, I just added a few screenshots here because it was new, and also so we have it in the PowerPoint as well. With that, let me go to some of the resources that we have here because I want to open it up for the Q&A. But it's important for me to emphasize that we have a lot of material out there that you should take a look at. The migration story, the get started, what you need to do to install, the fit analysis, including the feature list with expected availability dates, general functional documentation for planning optimization. There is online training, and there is a very active Yammer group. We have 12 or 1,300 active people in there, and it has more than 600 members. So I would definitely also recommend that you join this Yammer group. This is where we'll announce changes of planning optimization and so on. And with that, I can see I talked a few minutes longer than I expected, but we still have 5 minutes for Q&A. So, Randy, I haven't been looking at the chat while talking, but do we have something that we need to bring forward?
There are a lot of questions. Some of them are about migration. Some of them are about support for tier 1 environments. I think this was a very prevalent one. So maybe, Christian, you want to highlight that?
Yeah, so the requirement on the tier 1, so basically it's how do we, as a partner or someone who don't have a tier 2 environment readily available, how can they actually try out planning optimization? We know it's been a pain, and it still is. So we are working. There have been different options in the air. Unfortunately, I don't have a specific date for when it's going to happen. Right now, the idea is that there will be a tier 1.5, if you will, that will be made available, where you can run services like planning optimization without setting up a tier 2. So that's where we are. Unfortunately, I don't have a date for when this will be available. But I would definitely recommend that. I know there are a few threads on it on the Yammer group, and it's not something that I'm directly in control of because it's happening outside of the planning team, as it is a general, you could say, situations for all our microservices. You mentioned another question as well, Vanya?
Yeah, I think you covered it very well, Christian, but there are still a lot of questions around are there hard deadlines for migration to planning optimization? Are we safe? Are we looking out for the customers that have specific needs that are not yet met by planning optimization?
Yeah, so I will say that our approach is that we are trying to push customers to migrate as soon as possible. But obviously, if a customer don't have the required functionality, then we can't migrate them, and we fully understand that. In order for us to create awareness all the way through to ensure that every customer discover that it is available, we decided to have this message showing up. It will not prevent master planning from running. We will not overnight suddenly turn it off. There will not be a deadline as such until we have everything supported. And for ISVs, of course, there will be, they might be depending on additional extension points. And all customers that we have had involved in this, and ISVs as well, who required an exception to avoid this message, got it. That said, please don't apply for an exception if you generate planned production orders, because it will just generate some load mainly on me to review all of these, because you don't really need it, because you will not see that message as soon as you have any planned orders generated. And for, I would say, partners on the line, if it's annoying when you're doing demos that you have this message showing up, please remember that if you had a single planned production order generated in any of your plans in the past 8 days, you will not see this message. So it doesn't hinder. So I see questions popping up around the exception. So basically, the exception is just a message displayed to the user when running master planning. It will not impact the result. It will not impact the next batch job or anything like that. But it's a message telling them that planning optimization is available, and they should consider to migrate to planning optimization if possible, with some link to the documentation to get started on that. And there is also a link in case they need an exception to avoid showing this message going forward.
There is also a question about other regions, like South America, India, Japan, etc. So support is coming, and we will announce as we have more information. But yes, we are definitely looking into enabling planning optimization in all the same regions where Dynamics 365 for supply chain management is available.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we haven't been able to fully filter out the message shown in some of these regions. And obviously, if you happen to be in a region and you get the message, that you will instantly get the exception, and then you'll get rid of that.
Another interesting question for you, Christian. Still not clear when planning optimization will be available for production scenarios. If it's not available, do you run planning optimization for purchase items and then traditional planning for produced items?
Yeah, good question. So basically, as I understand the question is if there is a way to run like both planning engines at the same time. I would say, unfortunately, there is not. We have been looking into this, but it turned out to be way more complex and very error prone if we moved into an area where we could have both engines turned on at the same time. So we decided, at least for the time being, not to do it. Meaning that in case you have a single scenario where you need production, unfortunately you would have to stay on the classic engine until that scenario is supported. That said, we actually have the support for generating planned production orders, and if you play around with it, you will see that we actually support a lot of things there. It supports the full explosion, as you also saw in my demo. But we don't have the scheduling, and we don't have a number of other things, especially within process industry, that's currently not supported for production. So we are definitely aware, and that's also why we don't require an exception for production scenarios. But I would say, again, test it, because if it fulfills your demands, we do have customers with production scenarios that are running on planning optimization, and then you should definitely move over. And I think, Vanya, I can see we are running out of time, so I will say thank you very much for everyone who participated, and hand it over to Evan for closing it up.
Awesome. Thank you, Christian. We would like to get your feedback on today's session. I've posted a link to a short survey in the Q&A panel. We value your feedback and welcome your input on how we did today and what you would like to see in future sessions. That survey scores on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest score possible, and we thank you for your participation in that. As a reminder, the recording of today's session will be available on the TechTalks Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenter Christian, and a thank you to our audience for logging in and joining us today. Please stay safe and have a great rest of your day or evening wherever you are. Goodbye.